Welcome to the Jewish world. We are very excited to be here with Professor Jeffrey Lax of CUNY City University in New York City. He's a chairman of a department in the law school, which is in the headlines, not for good reasons. There's going to be on May 4th an event with CUNY School of Law. It sounds like a joke, and this is like out of a satire commentary, or a very sick joke, a prank. But there's going to be an event in CUNY glorifying the underground in Gaza. Now, that's a fancy name for the Hamas tunnels where hostages are held. It's the tunnels that are under civilian populations, which caused the destruction in Gaza because the IDF had to go there and it's under civilian infrastructure. Welcome, Professor. How do you explain, how did academia reach this point? Excuse me.
Well, it's so disgusting. And they're calling the tunnels occupied land, which to me is the equivalent of calling Auschwitz Jewish occupied land, because what happened to the hostages, they were raped in there, they were slaughtered, they were tortured. We just saw this woman come out so bravely the other day and talk about that she was sexually assaulted virtually every day and tried to commit suicide multiple times. I just it just boggles the mind, the monsters that these are, and that the world is latching onto it in civilized Western society. And now at my campus, CUNY, by the way, I don't work at a law school, I work on a different campus, but I do teach
Uh-huh.
law, so I am a law professor.
Mhm.
But you're right, the law school is doing this event, this and by the way, this is a city university. This is funded by taxpayers. That means that you, if you live in New York City or New York State, you are paying for this event that glorifies the Hamas tunnels as a resistance movement on occupied land. So it is especially outrageous. It's outrageous for anyone to do this. It's outrageous for a college to do this and to indoctrinate young students with these horrific beliefs, but it is especially horrific for a public institution, a government run institution. This is Mamdani's New York, Rabbi. This is
Yeah.
Mamdani's New York. And we knew this was coming. But now, Jewish people or any decent person who is paying taxes in New York City, where they're going to go up, and New York State are contributing to these events, to these disgusting events. And what do we know? We know that when they have these events, it leads to Jews being harassed, not being able to go to classes, and worse, getting hurt, getting injured physically in many situations. And so you can't have these events, and you certainly can't have them as taxpayer funded against. They are anti-Semitic, they are discriminatory, they violate the law in many ways, they are not free speech, and we could definitely get into that if you want to, but despicable, despicable.
I would ask you this question, but unfortunately, I think I know the answer. Do you think they're oblivious to what they're doing, or is it to provoke and show how far they can go? I believe they're doing it to provoke, and they say escalate for Palestine. It's been working for them. Uh, why are they being rewarded for breaking social norms?
They're not oblivious. They have been throwing words out there to get the public used to those words. This is a strategy. It's a very Marxist strat. This is, by the way, why are Marxists and Islamists working together? What does an Islamist have in common with a Marxist?
I mean, for
Really,
decades,
no.
unfortunately, that's been the reality.
Right. But what do they have in common? Do they agree on abortion?
They don't, I mean,
Does
it goes back to the 1970s when the Soviet Union sided with Egypt in a war against Israel. It's an
But
unholy
today's
alliance.
what's happening now, right now, in the world, on campuses throughout Western society, is this unbelievable bond between extremist Marxists and Islam and radical Islamists. And the only thing they have in common is they both want to destroy Western culture. That's it. That's it. And eventually, their goal is that they're the last ones left, and they're going to fight each other to see who survives. They can't
I,
coexist.
Even in Israel, by the way, fun fact or unfun fact, the Arab Party is officially the Communist Party. Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing. They cannot coexist. We know that. But yeah, no, that's exactly what's happening. And In terms of, I forgot what was the original question. I'm sorry. Now I forgot your original
The
question.
question is, why are they being rewarded for breaking social norms? Meaning, their strategy is escalate for Palestine. The strategy is to say these outrageous things, to say
Right.
resistance by all means possible, and all these, insane things that break social norms. But where you and I, if we said things that broke social norms, we would be punished. It would be like, okay, that guy's not normal. But
100%.
yet, when it comes to them, they are rewarded. The more social norms they break, the broader their acceptance.
For many years, they just threw up anything they could against the wall to see what sticks. And eventually, trial and error enough times, you find the things that work. BDS was failing for a long time.
Yeah.
But then they just kept throwing more things against the wall. And then October 7th, unfortunately, Hamas is being rewarded tremendously for the horrors they committed on October
Mhm.
7th. But again, they're trying to normalize these concepts and these words. Like, I think one of the big ones is genocide. What
Yeah.
Israel is doing is not genocide. And I'm not saying that, that's not my opinion. It is factually not genocide. There is a legal definition of genocide. I was on Piers Morgan's show against William Shabazz, who is a genocide expert. And he was going on there trying to explain why he thinks Israel is going to be found responsible by the International Criminal Court of Justice, the ICJ, for genocide. And I spoke to him about the rule of genocide and how
Mhm.
no country has ever been found guilty by the ICJ of genocide, and how Israel is not committing genocide. And he was playing all these word games about a different court, the ICC, which applies to individuals, not countries, because he knows it's not true. What Israel is doing is protecting themselves. They're not going out killing people because it makes no sense. You have 2 million Arab Muslims in Israel as citizens. They're
Mhm.
obviously not trying to kill Muslims. They're obviously not trying to kill Arabs. They're trying to kill Hamas. They're trying to kill the people who have sworn to an actual genocide against Israel. By definition, that is not genocide. By definition. So, but what are they doing? By normalizing this word and putting it out in the public, they get people used to it. Now you have AOC saying it in France, and she's like this big
In
hero. It's
Germany, of
controversial.
all
What's that?
places, in Munich, she's saying it, which
Oh,
is
Munich.
insane.
No, that's right. Right. Munich.
It's
Right.
like,
Right.
of
Even
all
more
places in the world.
apropos. Yeah. Of all the places in the world. That's right. That's right. And they're trying to normalize it. And they are. They're successful. They're normalizing it because these young kids and most people who are not educated about these issues, they just buy into it. And oh, this horrible thing that's going on is genocide. They don't know what genocide is. They don't know really what's happening. And and those are the good people. Those are the ones who don't know any better. But there are plenty of bad people who know exactly what they're doing, and they're just trying to normalize it, and it's working, unfortunately. And the
Let
real
me
reason we're losing is we're
mhm.
outnumbered.
Let me ask you a follow-up to that, and it has to do with what Brett Stevens was writing about. How do we win again? It's the hardest question. Brett Stevens was saying, shut down the ADL, shut down this, shut down that, just invest in day schools. Other people say, you can't just not fight anti-Semitism. How do we win again? They clearly have a lot of winning strategies. Do we have one winning strategy, or is it just we're outnumbered?
Yeah, I'm curious what your take is about this because I love Brett Stevens. I think he's brilliant. I think he's an unbelievably exceptional wordsmith, and it's almost like prose reading his articles.
Hmm.
That was the stupidest article I have ever read in my entire life
Yeah.
about anti-Semitism. That was the dumbest art. I was shocked that I believed it was Brett Stevens who wrote it because of the way it was written. It was so beautiful and
Yeah.
it sounded so nice. Go and build schools, go and build yeshivas, go and build Jewish communities. What a stupid thing to say because he literally his main argument was ignore anti-Semitism. How on earth do you think the Jews in 1930s Germany were not building Jewish schools? Were not trying to practice their religion? No. The problem in 1930s Germany was Hitler wasn't taken seriously. Hitler, listen to that again. Hitler was not taken seriously.
Of course,
Brett
because he
Stevens
wasn't
is
really German. He was Austrian.
well, for a lot of reasons, he was a lunatic and people thought
Yeah.
he was a lunatic. But Brett Stevens in 2026 is telling us to do the same thing again. The greatest mistake in world history, possibly, ignoring Hitler in the early 30s, and even earlier, when he could have been stopped. Now he's telling Jews the same thing: ignore anti-Semitism and build your communities. You can't build a community in Australia when people are firing machine guns across a beach against you. You can't daven when you're being shot. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't build yeshivas. Oh my gosh, God forbid. He's the one saying, don't focus on anti-Semitism. Don't address it. Focus on inner building. You cannot build if you're dead. You can't.
Well,
It is the dumbest and most I can't believe I'm saying this because I like him, but I can't hold back when I hear the dumbest article I've ever heard read by one of the smartest people I know. I'm shocked. I hope he regrets it and rethinks it. You can't build shuls. You can't build schools. You can't teach Yiddishkeit when you're not alive, when there's anti-Semitism and there's a threat leaving your house. And
correct. But let me just
you were at Parkey Synagogue, right?
In defense of Brett Stevens and sort of to contextualize things, I think there's also millions of dollars that go to fighting anti-Semitism that are billed under that tab today that are doing absolutely nothing to reduce anti-Semitism.
I agree.
So the question is, how do we win? How are we effective?
That's not what he said. He didn't say it's being misused. He said ignore. If he would have said that, Rabbi Poupko, I would have said, I agree. I think the ADL is doing a horrible job. I think Jonathan Greenblatt is a disgrace. I think he has politicized. I think it is despicable to politicize anti-Semitism. I think that's been one of the most disgraceful things that different groups have done, is to politicize it one way or the other. Disgraceful. So if he would have said it's being fought the wrong way and the ADL needs to be replaced or whatever else, I would have been fully on board with that. But he said ignore it. How do you ignore it? You can't ignore it. That's ridiculous. Again, you are echoing the biggest mistake made in the history of the world. Hitler was ignored. Hitler did not, again, I want to remind people that may not know this. Hitler did not take power by force in Germany. Hitler took power with guile, negotiations, and backroom dealings. That's how he took over the chancellery in Germany. That's when things turned permanently towards the horrible, horrible events that we all saw. And so there was a chance to stop Hitler earlier. And by the way, there were Jews who supported the Nazi Party in the 1930s. I think they were called Jewish nationalists.
By the way, the only Jews who successfully did defeat the Nazis was, and this gives me a lot of hope when we speak about Mamdani, are the Jews of New York, the famous Bugsy Siegel and Meyer Lansky, where they decided that they would take on the German-American Bund, and they did, and then they succeeded. So I think there's a lot to be said for New York Jewry. I think,
yeah, and there were Jewish servicemen who went in and fought and flew and were air fighters in World War II. 100%, no question about it. I mean, there's no question about it. But
so how do we win these? So for example, you have this event coming up. They're normalizing the Hamas tunnels. They're even glorifying them. What do? Do you show up and heckle the way they do? Do you try and shut the event down? Do you write an article debating the, how do you fight that?
Well, so there are people who do all those things. I don't personally believe any of those things work. Okay. I don't want to discourage people from counter protests. I don't want to discourage people from writing articles, but do I really think those things work? I don't think those are the approaches. I think we still have laws in this country. And until they change the laws, and Mamdani is already changing them, Mamdani has already changed Jewish protections, as we know, in New York City by removing the anti-BDS law, by removing the IRA definition as law in New York City. So it's already happened, and we've already seen consequences. There was a big story in the news the other day that the Brooklyn Navy Yards refused to renew a lease of a company that sells drones to Israel.
Yeah.
Despicable. That would not happen under the Adams administration with the executive orders that he had. Couldn't have happened.
So what would you do with the law?
I would fight. I think there are numerous ways to fight this. I think one of the big ones is on the legal battlefield. It has to be a very public battle, has to be in the media. We have to make people aware of how despicable this is. I think we have to convince people that it's not really anti-Semitism that's at stake here. When I talk about this, I always say it's really not about Jews. It's about Western culture. The Islamists and the Marxists that we've been talking about for the past few minutes are really trying to get rid, not of Jews, they're trying to get rid of Western culture. The Jews are a symptom of their broader agenda. So we need to make people aware of what are they really trying to do and shut them down with legal. I think the strongest route is through legal means. And there are a lot of different legal means, and we've been doing a lot of them in Safe
Now,
Campus.
you have famously argued that anti-Semitism, discrimination against Jews, should not be seen as one kind of Jewish identity, but five different kinds. Uh, what are they quickly, if I can ask, the five different types of Jewish identities that need legal protection?
Yeah, I just think people are protected in five ways. There are five different classes
Mhm.
of protection for Jews. So one is a practicing Jew. If you're religious and you're discriminated against based on your religion, that's obviously illegal. So I call that P for practicing Jew, Preji, Prejr. R, I call religious Zionism. Those are people who believe their Zionism comes from religion. That's all. It's nothing political. It's not about the government in Israel, not about who's in charge, not about politics. It's about that they believe the conversation Hashem had with Abraham about the land of Israel. And then the third category is ethnic Zionism. So there's two kinds of Zionism. Ethnic Zionism is a connection you feel to the land of Israel. It could be a shared language, shared culture. That's what ethnicity is, and that's protected under American law. So even if you're not religious, you can be ethnically Zionist, and that's fully protected. And then the third, so PRE, practice Judaism, religious Zionism, ethnic Zionism, and then J, Jewish ethnicity. This is the dangerous one sometimes. This is somebody who has any connection to Judaism. One parent could be Jewish, one of four grandparents could be Jewish, all four of your parents could be Jewish, but then everything else is a variable. So either you could be religious, you could be not religious, you could be Zionist, you could be anti-Zionist. The key here is that no group can discriminate against each other and say, I'm not anti-Semitic, I'm Jewish. So a non-religious ethnic Jew, someone who's of Jewish ethnicity, has four Jewish parents who have no connection to Judaism whatsoever or Israel, and they hate Zionist Jews and they hate religious Jews. They cannot discriminate against the P category, right? So
Let me ask you just a question about the P category.
yeah.
There are millions of people in Africa who practice Judaism, believing that they are Jewish. Would they be protected? But they're not recognized by most Jews as part of the Jewish faith because they didn't have conversions, etc. Would that be protected because they practice?
Well, I mean, I'm talking about American law, but to
Uh-huh.
the extent that they move to America, absolutely. As long as their
Yeah.
belief is genuine,
Hmm.
then their religion is protected. The religious belief is protected.
Hmm.
I'm not talking about both sides of the argument here. I'm not trying to define the Neturei
Hmm.
Karta's belief system. I'm trying to tell you, are you protected? Are you a category that's protected? And
Hmm.
so a religious Jew, by the way, it works both ways. So someone who's a practice in the P category, who's a practicing Jew, they can't discriminate someone who's in the Jewish J category, Jewish ethnicity
Hmm.
category, because they're not religious. This happens too, by the way.
What do
Religious
you do
Jews do
if
sometimes.
what do you do if Peter Beinart shows up and tells you that everything he believes is religious beliefs and you're discriminating against him?
Peter Beinart is entitled to his religious beliefs, but I don't think he's sharing religious beliefs. I've
Why, he
debated Peter
says he
Beinart.
has this whole book, Jews After Gaza, and I'm sure he'll tell you that it's in his belief. So what do you do then?
Well, I mean, we have to get into more. That's too general. I don't know how to answer a general question because religion is very specific. You have to tell me what the religious belief specifically is,
Hmm.
because it either is a genuine religious belief or it's not, and a court would have to make that determination.
Hmm.
But I have debated Beinart on this, and we haven't disagreed on that so much. We've disagreed. I mean, we've disagreed about almost everything, but mainly it's about the legal classifications. It's an amazing thing with Peter Beinart because he goes on the air and he says things that are legally not true, and he puts them out there as legal premises. And when he had me on his show and interviewed me, he said to me, "What is your expertise?" He actually really cast doubt into what my expertise is, because he said, "I'm not a Middle Eastern studies expert. What is my expertise?" And I said, "I'm a lawyer. I know the law."
I would argue that his expertise is disinformation
I
because there's
agree,
just
because he's putting laws out there so he doesn't understand
uh-huh.
what the definition of genocide is. Clearly,
Mhm.
he doesn't understand the definition of any of these of apartheid. He'll give you the
Uh-huh.
wrong definition of apartheid, the wrong definition of settler colonialism. He'll give you the wrong definition. So
Uh-huh.
again, I think a lawyer is a very good expert to have on, who understands international law, understands what genocide is, and he does not. He does not understand what settler colonial is, or genocide is, or apartheid is. I mean, I think he does understand it. I think he just lies about it. But anyway, so he questioned my expertise in that way. But I think a lawyer is very important, because a lawyer is able to distinguish these categories. And I have debated lawyers who are experts on it. And I believe, like I did on Piers Morgan's show with a genocide expert who was a Jewish guy, William Shabbos was his name. And he was an expert on genocide. And people should watch that debate. It's a very interesting debate, how he tries to now I caught him. I mean, he was using very sneaky language to trick people who are not experts in this area. That's why you need the experts.
Wow. It's a lot to unpack. The something that came up today, the Washington Post columnists, whoever's left in the Washington Post, they were speaking about the Munich conference, which again is a terrible place to bring talking points. Again, regardless of your position, Munich is not a good place to criticize the Jews in general. Not there's not good precedents to that. They were saying like AOC gets up there, says it's genocide, and Chris Murphy also similar stuff. And they're like, what do you mean? 40% of American Jews believe the IDF committed war crimes. And so what's wrong with AOC saying this in Munich? What do you say to that, where they're using the Jewish beliefs about the war in Gaza? So I know you have your beliefs about it, but let's go for a second with a Jew who believes that the IDF did commit war crimes. Is that Jew, do you think, comfortable with AOC doing that in Munich? Are the Washington Post editors saying it's something that should be okay with Jews, or should all Jews be uncomfortable with what AOC did?
Well, the first thing that has to be said is it is factually not a genocide. Factually.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to go on and on in your podcast about what international law says in the cases that have come
Mhm.
before the international two courts, the ICC and the ICJ. But there are multiple cases that have come up that
Mhm.
really demonstrate it's not genocide. It doesn't meet the definition. The definition of genocide, really
But
quickly,
we'll go with the Jews who believe it is.
well, I mean,
Is
I
it
don't think it
offensive
matters.
to those Jews, you think, that they do this in Munich, or it makes no difference?
I don't care where they do it. It's despicable and
Mhm.
false wherever they do it. It's a trope, anti-Semitic trope. It's anti-Semitic wherever you do it.
So
It doesn't
then
bother me
can the
more that
perpetrators say, okay, I am offending Professor Lax, but I'm not anti-Semitic because 40% of Jews agree with me.
if I don't care how many people agree that the world is flat, I know that the world is not
Mm,
flat. So you can have 99% of the world say that Israel committed genocide in Gaza. I know the law, and I know that they factually did
mm,
not. By the way, the stats are coming out now that it was the top ratio, the best ratio of combatant to civilian
mhm.
deaths. Now, any civilian death is horrible. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
Horrific. I don't want any civilian
Mhm.
ever dying. That includes Palestinians, that includes Israelis, includes everybody. But now the numbers are coming out, even according to the Gaza's own numbers, that sounds like they were very close to like 2 to 1, or even close, or even lower than that, of the combatant to civilian ratio deaths. So nobody's talking. Nobody's talking about it anymore. Piers Morgan has
You,
show after show after show about the numbers, and now no more. You know
you know
why?
what?
Because Israel waged an unbelievably impossible moral war.
You know, it's interesting. They win by putting out these flashy arguments that go viral and take root in people's heart. And by the time you realize that you've been pranked, people
Right.
moved on. So another example is this week, Al Jazeera, echoed by all these SJPs, says Israel used bombs that evaporated Palestinians. And everyone's like, oh my God, they evaporated Palestinians. Thousands of Palestinians have been evaporated. So I look up and I want to see what's this bomb. that's evaporating people because that sounds like almost science fiction. Turns out I forgot what it's called, MK80 something. It's a standard bomb that the US Army uses. Obviously, it's not a good thing because a bomb is a bomb and it takes people's lives. But the US has used it and killed over 100,000 people with it.
Bless you.
But they'll put it out and be like, Israel's evaporating people like this never happened before, and like no one else would do such a thing. But it's a bomb. It's unfortunate that it has to be used, but it's a bomb and it's conventional. And so I think they win by putting out these incredible figures that by the time, like you're saying, the combatant to civilian ratio is 2 to 1. By the time you're able to fact check that, they've already moved on to the next piece of disinformation.
Well, I hate to say this on any show that I ever do, but most especially on a show like yours that has a large Jewish following, and you're a rabbi, and you have a lot of people who are suffering who are watching this show. We are losing this battle, and that's why we're losing. They're doing that. They're throwing up everything against the wall, and the average person, the low information consumer of information that gets their news from TikTok or whatever
Yeah,
social media nonsense these kids get nowadays, we are losing
yeah,
that battle. And we are so vastly outnumbered. There still aren't the same number of Jews in the world today as before the Holocaust started. So, what does that tell you? I mean, you talk about a genocide. We're not back up to our number again.
right.
Okay. And we're eliminated basically from every country in the Middle East now. That's a
Yeah,
genocide. So, people don't care about the truth. We are in a post truth world,
yeah,
unfortunately. And you're right. They're not speaking truth, but they're saying things that are effective because it's easy to hate Jews. It's been easy to hate Jews for thousands of years. And
right.
Jews have always been the scapegoat. But I'm telling you, the thing that we need to grip onto in terms of talking about this is it's not really Jews, it's Western culture. Both of these armies, the Islamist army and the Marxist army, they just want to control civilization. That's it. They just want
Wow.
to take over the world. Jews are collateral. Jews are the low hanging fruit.
Wow.
Next, it's Christians. Next, it's anybody who believes in democracy, freedom, capitalism. They talk about capitalism all the
Yeah.
time, about how evil capitalism is. They're not shy about it.
Uh-huh.
By the way, at all these anti-Semitic rallies, all the pro-Hamas rallies, all the encampments, you know what people should do that they don't usually do? Don't just look at the big people. Look at the big sign that says globalize the intifada and all these horrific things. Don't just do that. Look at the bottom of the sign. There is always a Marxist website on the bottom of those
Really?
signs, almost always. Yeah,
Wow.
like PSL, the Progressive Socialist Labor,
The
and the Answer
VSA?
Coalition.
Yeah.
So they're the ones funding this. They're the ones paying for this.
Wow. All right. Professor Jeffrey Lax, that was a lot to process. Very, very informative. I thank you for being like I said, one of the first people in this country that ever fought against campus anti-Semitism, that recognized it for what it is. It's unfortunate that you were right and that this has become just so rampant across campuses, but we need more people like you fighting the fight.
The same to you, and I really appreciate you spending the time with me and having me on your show. I'm a big admirer.
All right, thank you. Thanks a lot.